Captain Veltar of the Cathani had never seen a ghost ship before, but she was certain this was one. The ancient vessel drifted in the void between spiral arms. 3 kilometers of battle-scarred metal that should have been space dust centuries ago.
Still can't believe Command approved this mission,
muttered Security Chief Rax. The massive bear-like Ursine barely fit in his bridge chair, and his constant worry about his cubs back home made him question every dangerous assignment.
My little ones will think their father's gone space mad, chasing legends at the galaxy's edge.
It's not a legend if we're looking at it,
replied Dr. Myron Corval from her science station. The pale blue Altarian's excitement was infectious. She lived for discoveries like this.
Spectral analysis confirms it. This ship is over 3,000 years old. If I'm right about these markings...
She paused, hardly believing her own words.
This could be an actual human vessel.
Navigator Thoss clicked his insect-like mandibles nervously.
Humans are myths, Doctor. Stories to frighten children. Everyone knows they never really existed.
But Captain Veltar's cat-like sensory organs were focused on the main display, where symbols burned into the hull appeared in letters taller than a grown sign. UTS Defiance. Through hardships to the stars. The bridge fell silent. Even their communications officer, Lyra, whose energy-based consciousness existed within a crystal matrix, pulsed with amazement.
If this is authentic,
Dr. Corval whispered,
we could solve the greatest mystery in the galaxy. What really happened to humanity? Why did they vanish so completely that most people think they're just stories?
Veltar studied her crew. Thoss with his brilliant navigation skills, but superstitious nature. Rax, whose protective instincts made him the perfect security chief, but also kept him awake at night worrying about threats to his family. Corval, driven by curiosity that sometimes overcame common sense. And Lyra, always seeking to understand new forms of consciousness.
We board the ship,
she decided.
Full safety protocols. But if we find something we can't handle, we leave immediately. Some mysteries aren't worth dying for.
None of them noticed how the starlight seemed to bend slightly around the derelict, or how their instruments gave different readings each time they looked away. The docking bay of the Defiance came alive at their approach. Emergency lights flickered on in waves, revealing corridors that stretched into darkness. The air itself seemed heavy with age and sorrow.
Atmosphere is breathable,
reported their ship's engineer through the comm.
Oxygen-nitrogen mix, a bit stale but safe. The ship's been maintaining life support for centuries.
Rax hefted his plasma rifle, though what good it would do against 1,000-year-old ghosts was unclear.
Why would life support keep running this long? Most emergency systems shut down after a few decades.
Maybe they're not just emergency systems,
Lyra suggested, her crystal form catching the emergency lighting.
I'm detecting some kind of energy patterns throughout the ship. They feel familiar somehow, but I can't place why.
They moved through corridors built for beings about 2 meters tall, clearly designed for humans, past empty quarters where personal belongings still waited, photographs of human families standing before alien sunsets, children's drawings stuck to walls, half-finished letters to loved ones who would never read them. Dr. Corval stopped at one room, studying a photo of a human family.
They were explorers,
she realized.
Look at the star charts in the background. This family lived on the frontier, pushing into unknown space.
Her voice softened.
They had children aboard this ship.
Thoss's navigation instincts were pinging warnings he couldn't identify. The ship's layout felt wrong somehow. Corridors seemed longer when he wasn't looking directly at them, and his spatial sense kept insisting they were walking in circles, while simultaneously going deeper into the vessel. They entered what appeared to be the ship's central command hub. The moment they crossed the threshold, workstations blazed to life throughout the room. Holographic displays activated, showing star charts and tactical data in languages that predated their civilization. And then, in the center of the room, a figure materialized. She was tall and dark-skinned, wearing a military uniform with unfamiliar insignia. But her eyes held a weight that spoke of impossible decisions and terrible knowledge.
Emergency protocols activated.
The hologram spoke in accented coalition standard.
I am Admiral Sarah Chen, commanding officer of the United Terran ship Defiance. If you are hearing this message...
She paused, her gaze seeming to settle on each of them in turn.
Then either we succeeded in our mission, or you found our tomb.
This wasn't just a recording. Somehow, the hologram was responding to their presence.
To whoever finds this record,
Admiral Chen continued,
humanity made its final stand here, at the edge of everything we knew and loved, the enemy we faced.
The hologram flickered, and shadows moved independently in the corners of the room.
The enemy wasn't seeking conquest. They were seeking to erase us, not just kill us, but make it so we had never existed at all.
The boarding party moved deeper into the ship, following corridors lined with crew quarters that told the story of an entire community. These weren't just soldiers. Families had lived here, with children and teachers and artists, all facing whatever horror had driven humanity to this desperate end. Rax stopped at one quarter, staring at a child's drawing on the wall. It showed stick figures of humans standing before a star field, with childish handwriting below. Daddy protecting everyone so we can sleep safe.
They brought their families.
He said, his voice rough with emotion.
Whatever they were facing, they couldn't leave their cubs behind.
In the ship's medical bay, Dr. Corval accessed medical logs that made her skin turn pale blue with horror. Case after case described something the humans called memory death. Crew members whose past began to become uncertain, whose very existence started to feel questionable.
Listen to this.
She said, her voice shaking.
Patient claims to remember growing up on Mars, but ship records show he was born in the asteroid colonies. When we showed him the discrepancy, he began to fade. Not physically. He's still here, but he's becoming convinced he never existed.
Lyra's crystal form flickered with distress.
How can someone doubt their own existence while they're still existing?
Another case.
Corval continued.
Chief Engineer reports crew members are disappearing from other people's memories while remaining physically present. They're still here, but their crewmates struggle to remember their names, their relationships, their importance. One patient described it as watching himself get erased from other people's minds.
Thos's compound eyes were reflecting patterns that seemed to shift when observed directly.
Captain, my navigation systems are giving impossible readings. According to my spatial awareness, we're in 6 different locations simultaneously.
The ship is affecting us.
Veltar realized, her feline instincts prickling with danger.
Whatever the humans contained here, it's still active.
They pressed on, driven by the same need for answers that had brought humanity to this place. In the archives, they found recordings that defied understanding. Star charts showing regions of space that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions, mathematical equations that appeared to rewrite themselves, and tactical reports describing battles against enemies that attacked memories rather than ships.
Wait.
Dr. Corval said, her scientific mind trying to make sense of the data.
Can you explain this more simply? What exactly were they fighting?
In the command center, Admiral Chen's presence grew stronger, as if their questions were helping her maintain coherence across the centuries.
The first contact happened at Research Station Omega-7.
Chen explained, as star charts materialized around them.
We sent our best first contact team to make peaceful contact with what appeared to be an ancient civilization. They returned 6 months later, but
She struggled for words.
they returned wrong, not infected or controlled, changed, fundamentally altered.
The star chart showed system after system pulsing red. But the red wasn't spreading through space in any normal way. It jumped from place to place, following patterns that made no geometric sense.
We called the enemy the Erasers
Chen continued.
because that's what they do. They don't destroy things, they erase them. They make it so things never existed in the first place. A star doesn't explode, it just stops having ever been there. A person doesn't die, they become someone who was never born.
Rax's warrior instincts were screaming, but he couldn't identify the threat.
How do you fight something like that? How do you battle an enemy that attacks the fact that you exist?
That's what we spent 17 years trying to learn.
Chen replied.
We developed new weapons, new defenses, new ways of thinking about reality itself. But every victory came at a cost. Every time we understood them better, we became more like them. And the more like them we became,
The more you risked being erased yourself.
Dr. Corval finished, her scientific mind finally grasping the horrible logic. The ship around them groaned and shifted, but not with mechanical stress. It was shifting through different states of existence, trying to show them something while avoiding the attention of enemies that might still be watching.
The ship is trying to warn us.
Lyra observed, her energy-based consciousness allowing her to perceive the vessel's distress more directly.
After 3,000 years alone, it's desperate to pass on what it learned.
They found themselves in what had been the ship's primary research lab, where human scientists had worked frantically to understand their enemy. The equipment was unlike anything in Coalition databases, devices that seemed designed to measure the stability of existence itself. Another hologram materialized, Dr. Elizabeth Reeves, a human scientist whose form flickered between solid and translucent, as if she couldn't decide whether she existed or not.
Xenopsychology Division.
She introduced herself, her voice carrying strange harmonics.
If you're accessing this record, then you need to understand the truth we discovered. The erasers aren't beings in any sense we understand. They're absences, gaps where existence used to be, and those gaps are alive and hungry.
But how do gaps fight wars?
Thus asked, his logical mind struggling with the concept.
By convincing reality that the gaps were always there.
Dr. Reeves replied.
They make the universe forget that the things they erase ever existed. Stars, planets, entire civilizations, not destroyed, but edited out of the story of existence itself.
As they continued through the ship, the Coalition team began experiencing what the humans had called memory bleed. Their own recollections started mixing with the stored experiences of the human crew, making it hard to tell what was real and what was borrowed memory. Rax found himself remembering battles he'd never fought, defending children who weren't his cubs from enemies that couldn't be seen or touched. The memories felt more real than his actual past, filled with desperate courage and protective love. Thos's navigation abilities became flooded with star charts of impossible regions, the spaces between galaxies where normal physics broke down, and the concept of location became meaningless.
We need to leave.
Veltar ordered, but her words carried weight beyond a simple command. She could feel the ship's influence growing stronger, its desperate need to share its burden beginning to override their survival instincts.
Captain!
Lyra called, stress fractures spreading through her crystal matrix.
I'm detecting massive instabilities in local space. The ship's presence is affecting reality in ways that shouldn't be possible.
Through the viewports, they could see space itself beginning to change. Stars flickered between existing and not existing, and the familiar backdrop of the galaxy seemed to bend like a photograph being folded.
the erasers.
Admiral Chen's voice echoed through the ship without any visible source.
They followed your curiosity back from your home systems. We held them at bay for 3 millennia, but contact with living minds has given them the pathway they needed.
Dr. Corval accessed the ship's deepest databases, knowledge flooding her mind that human scientists had died to contain. She saw the true scope of the threat. The erasers existed in the gaps between thoughts, between heartbeats, between the connections that held reality together. Every relationship, every memory, every cause and effect connection gave them something to feed on.
There's more!
She gasped, data streaming through her consciousness.
The humans didn't just sacrifice themselves to stop the erasers. They found a way to fight back, but using it required becoming like the enemy. To wound something that exists in the spaces between existence, humanity had to learn to exist in those same spaces.
They became ghosts.
Rax realized.
To fight ghosts.
The team found themselves in the ship's final chamber, a space where humanity had made its ultimate decision. The room felt larger than the ship that contained it, its walls covered with equations describing the mathematics of sacrifice, and diagrams showing how to voluntarily step outside normal existence while still protecting those within it.
This is where we made our choice.
Admiral Chen explained, her presence now strong enough to seem completely real.
Every human in the fleet faced the same decision you're facing now.
Holographic displays showed them humanity's final hours. Millions of humans, from children to elders, choosing to step outside normal reality, rather than allow the erasers to use their connections as bridges to other species.
We could have run.
Chen continued.
We could have fled to the Galactic core, warned your coalition, let others deal with the threat. But running would have only delayed the inevitable. The erasers follow connections, and all life is connected.
Rax stepped forward, his massive frame trembling.
You chose to protect species you'd never met, cubs that weren't your own.
All children are our children when the darkness comes.
Chen replied, seeming as solid as any living being.
We learned that from watching your coalition. The galaxy is a family.
Through impossible viewports, they could see the erasers approaching. Not ships or creatures, but gaps in space itself, areas where the universe simply stopped. They moved by convincing reality they had always been there.
They're using our presence.
Veltar realized, her cat-like instincts finally identifying the trap.
Our connection to coalition space, it's giving them a path to follow home.
The choice is yours.
Admiral Chen said.
You can flee, cut all connections to this place, and hope they don't follow your trail. Or you can stay, join our watch, and help us hold the line.
But Dr. Corval had been studying the human databases more carefully.
Wait, there are other options. The humans developed multiple strategies. Look at this. The Guardian Protocol. Not everyone has to become a ghost.
The Guardian Protocol was humanity's most sophisticated solution. A way for some to join the Eternal Watch while others returned home as living bridges, maintaining just enough connection to coordinate defenses without providing the erasers with a pathway to follow.
We can split up.
Veltar realized, studying the complex mathematics involved.
Some stay to join the watch. Others return to prepare the coalition. We become a network spanning both normal reality and the spaces between.
The decision was agonizing but necessary. Rax volunteered immediately. His protective instincts made the choice inevitable.
My cubs need a galaxy to grow up in. If standing watch protects them, then I stand watch.
Dr. Corval chose to stay as well, her scientific mind recognizing the ultimate research opportunity.
Someone needs to study this, understand it, help it evolve. This is the most important work anyone could do.
Thos would return, his navigation skills perfect for establishing the communication networks needed to coordinate galactic defenses. Lyra would also go back, her energy-based nature ideal for creating the subtle early warning systems that could detect eraser incursions without understanding what they were detecting.
Captain,
Veltar faced the hardest choice: stay with her crew or return to lead the larger defense effort. In the end, duty decided for her.
I go back. The Coalition needs someone who understands the threat to coordinate our response.
The Guardian Protocol began with those who chose to stay. Unlike humanity's original sacrifice, this was a gentler transformation. They retained their essential selves while gaining the ability to exist partially outside normal reality. Rax felt his protective instincts expand beyond his own cubs to encompass every living being in the galaxy. He was still a father, still a warrior, but now his family included species he'd never met. Dr. Corval's curiosity merged with the accumulated knowledge of human scientists, allowing her to continue her research while becoming part of the defense against the erasers. She could feel centuries of human experience joining with her own expertise.
We're still ourselves.
Rax assured those preparing to leave, his voice now carrying harmonics that resonated through dimensions.
Just more. And we're not alone anymore.
Admiral Chen, solid now in a way she hadn't been for millennia, welcomed them.
You've given us something we thought we'd lost, hope. For 3,000 years, we've been holding the line. Now we can start pushing back.
Veltar and Thos prepared for their return, carrying quantum communicators that would let them stay in contact with the Guardians, while appearing completely isolated to any outside observer. They would establish a galaxy-wide early warning network, disguised as routine communication upgrades. Lyra underwent a different kind of transformation. Her energy matrix was modified to carry special frequencies that could detect eraser activity without understanding what it was detecting. She would become a living sensor, able to warn of threats before they became visible.
The Coalition will know there's a threat,
Veltar explained as they prepared to depart.
but not the full nature of what we're defending against. The knowledge itself is dangerous. The more you understand the erasers, the easier it becomes for them to erase you.
As they departed, the ship's new guardians gathered to see them off. They were still recognizably themselves: Rax's protective determination, Corval's scientific passion, but expanded beyond individual limitations.
Remember us as we were.
Rax said, his voice carrying love across impossible distances.
But know us as we've become. We watch the spaces between so you can live in the spaces within.
The Defiance altered course, moving into the void between galaxies where the real battle continued. Its crew of humans and aliens worked with a unity that transcended species, expanded beyond individual existence, but retaining what made them who they were. Years passed. The Coalition implemented new defenses based on Veltar's classified reports, early warning systems that appeared to be communication improvements, defensive protocols disguised as routine security measures, and research initiatives that studied advanced mathematics without revealing their ultimate purpose. Thus established navigation networks that could detect spatial anomalies caused by eraser activity, while Lyra integrated detection systems into communication grids across Coalition space. Neither system required operators to understand what they were watching for. They simply triggered alerts when reality began behaving strangely. The galaxy prospered, never knowing how close it had come to being erased from existence. Citizens went about their lives, raised families, created art, and explored new worlds, protected by guardians they didn't know existed. In the void between galaxies, the Defiance continued its patrol. The combined human-alien crew had created something new, a guardian consciousness that could adapt and learn, developing increasingly sophisticated defenses against an enemy that attacked the very concept of existence.
We're not just holding the line anymore.
Admiral Chen reported during one of their quantum communications.
We're actually winning. Slowly, carefully, but winning. Your people brought us the ability to grow, to change, to become more than we were.
The erasers found themselves facing an opponent that could evolve. Where once they had encountered humanity's noble but limited sacrifice, they now confronted a multi-species consciousness that combined different ways of thinking and existing. Decades became centuries. The Watchers in the Void occasionally gained new volunteers, beings who chose transformation over risking galactic extinction. Each brought their species' unique perspective to the collective defense. The battles continued in dimensions beyond normal perception, but the tide had turned. The erasers were being pushed back, not destroyed, for beings that existed in gaps couldn't be destroyed in any conventional sense, but contained beyond the void between galaxies. In Coalition space, new generations grew up in safety, pursuing dreams and discoveries while protected by guardians who had chosen duty over personal existence. The galaxy hummed with life and activity, its communication networks carrying messages of joy, while simultaneously serving as an immune system against existential threats. In the deepest vaults of Coalition Command, a final message waited. Not a warning this time, but a promise from Admiral Chen.
To future generations, know that you are protected. The darkness that sought to erase us has been pushed back, held at bay by guardians who chose to become more than themselves. We are the watchers between moments, the guardians of the spaces you cannot see. We exist partially outside reality so that you can exist fully within it. We remember the threats you've forgotten. We stand watch while you explore. We face the darkness so you can chase the light. The galaxy is vast and full of wonders yet to be discovered. Live fully, love deeply, and reach always for the stars, knowing that those who came before have prepared the way. The watch continues, the galaxy endures, the future is yours to write.
End of transmission. The Watchers remain at their posts. Reality holds firm. The stars shine on.